Hi, welcome to another edition of our Penn State Coaching Search here on Mirror TV. Cory Giger, Rudel, Ray Eckenrode, and really a huge time for Penn State, a huge time for this search committee. And Neil was just talking about, before we started filming, how quiet everything has kind of been. We hear some names trickle out, Neil, but really it's been a very quiet process so far.
Well, based on everything that they've been through, and another Sandusky rocking today with more charges, another arrest. So, I mean, I'm kind of just continue to be reeling from this whole month. But, yeah, I'm sure this committee has tried to button up as much as possible. You know, the whole school has been through everything it has, and they probably want to try to not be embarrassed by 3 or 4 people publicly pulling out.
Ray, one of the discussions is, do they go a bigger name, a household name kind of guy, or do they kind of get back to the education, the academic, the revered kind of coach, which might be a smaller name and wouldn't necessarily cost as much money? And that's kind of the dilemma I would think that the search committee has.
And you phrase dilemma is the exact word. I'm not sure, but there almost has got to be some amount of trade-off on any candidate they bring in. A big name will make fans happy. Doesn't really jibe with the idea of the university president saying we're trying to put less of an emphasis on football. May rub government the wrong way, which leads to you make your fans happy and you hang on to some of that football revenue, but maybe you alienate some government people and you're losing legislative support, maybe grant money, maybe research money down the road. So there are a lot of competing concerns that this search committee has to deal with.
Okay, we'll go through some specific names here, but what's interesting is depending on whom they hire, can they afford, if it's not a big name, will season ticket holders not necessarily continue to pay? Will the football team struggle? Then financially, Neil, would that hurt them and hurt their entire athletic? Those are the kind of the issues that are
There's just so many things in play. Just to follow up real quick on what Ray said, maybe what Erickson was doing is trying to get ahead of this and get the fans ready for this may be the direction that the search is going to take. The thing I'm looking at is, a big picture. I mean, this is so much more than who's going to coach the team next year. I think it's going to be a 2, 3 year, 4 or 5 year process until they really begin to re-heal. I mean, the guy whose name is on the list, the guy from Harvard, he would probably be somebody that people could, you get a guy, he's 55 years old. He's had success at a couple other places, so you would think he can handle a program. But you hire a guy from Harvard, it's hard to really criticize that, from everything they've been through. And I wouldn't underestimate that as much as we always say, oh, Gruden could excite everybody. Well, right now, everybody is just reeling. They may need more of a calming presence.
His name is Tim Murphy. He coached at Cincinnati from '89 to '93, coached at Maine before that. He is expected to become the president of the American Football Coaches Association next year. So this is a very well-respected guy. And therein lies the discussion. If you hire Tim Murphy, okay, and we'll throw out some other names like a David Shaw from Stanford or a Mark Richt from Georgia. We'll get into some of those specifically later on. But if you hire a Tim Murphy, are the fans excited in any way, shape, or form?
If you hire Tim Murphy, you're taking President Erickson at his word in this story in today's USA Today that he has a real interest in shifting the focus of the university somewhat away from football. You're making a statement, a long-term statement about developing Penn State as a academic university. And recognizing up front, you're going to take some hits.
But you have 107,000 seats. Can you afford to do that financially?
And that becomes, and you and I talked about this on the radio a little bit. Although they're not going to discuss this publicly, this search committee has to have had some discussions about the economic ramifications of what they're doing, how much tolerance there is for losing money in the football program versus, and Neil touched on it. I mean, this issue isn't just about the football program, and it isn't just about Penn State University. It's about the future of Central Pennsylvania, because the football program is the revenue driver for the university, and the university is a revenue driver and an employer for all of Central Pennsylvania. This is a huge implications go well beyond football.
And what we don't know also is, I mean, they put this STEP program in, clearly that's a work in progress, and who knows, maybe they launched it knowing that they better launch it before this stuff comes out. I'm just wondering, can you get to a point where, you're going to lose money for a couple years. The last guy that you hired from the Ivy League worked out pretty well. You look at Murphy; he had more NFL quarterbacks than Penn State has had. You don't have to be the biggest name on the block to get the job done. I think people will have an open mind. The one thing is, you're seeing a lot of former players band together in support of Tom Bradley. I just don't see them.
We'll get to Bradley in just a bit. One final thing on the name recognition, because several candidates we've heard from: Tom Clements, the Packers quarterback coach; Darren Perry, the Packers safeties coach. Okay, if Urban Meyer goes into a 17-year-old kid's living room at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to recruit him, and then Tim Murphy goes into that kid's living room at 7 o'clock at night, or Clements, or Darren Perry, how does Penn State compete from a recruiting standpoint against basically its biggest challenger in the league with Urban Meyer?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why it may be a 3-4 year process of rebuilding and you reestablishing. I touched on, recruiting relationships. All that is probably going to be new, whether it's Murphy, Shaw, Rick, any of the outside the Penn State family or the star name. I just saw something of Urban Meyer's contract. I thought it'd be interesting if they hired Urban Meyer, but he gets $450,000 if he's coaching the team on January 31st of 2014. So that means if he gets through 2012 and 2013, I mean, how unstable is this guy?
And as far as the recruiting goes, I don't think there's any doubt, unless Penn State gets really good really quick at evaluating talent and finding that kid who Urban Meyer's not in his living room, but he has the potential to be that kind of, to find those sort of hidden gem type players. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt you're talking about a 2 or 3 year recruiting lag for sure. A guy like Clements or Shaw, I think has a leg to stand on, saying I've seen, I've seen Aaron Rodgers. I know what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. I can get you there, but that's a leg to stand on is not even.
And Shaw can say I just developed Andrew Luck. That
did he though?
Well, he was the offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach before this year, and this was his first year as a head coach.
I'm thinking Harbaugh had something to do.
Well, obviously he did, but again, David Shaw, and again, he's the Stanford coach. His name has come up a little bit. I'm talking about when he sits in a room with a kid. Tom Clements threw for 39,000 yards in the Canadian Football League, 250 touchdowns. The guy has worked with quarterbacks. So again, if you don't get a big name and you get one of these names, Clements can say he worked with Aaron Rodgers. Shaw can say he worked with Andrew Luck, and a 17, 18-year-old kid might be enticed by that.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. In terms of Shaw, I think he would fit the dynamic for sure of academic institution. He would be an African American hire. The one thing I would be really they gave him an opportunity at Stanford. This guy, it wasn't like he had been a head coach before. I guess I'd be surprised if he just would uproot and come here with all this uncertainty.
What we really don't know about a lot of these guys is, and I think you and I have taken to call it the Tomlin factor.
Right.
Is what kind of presence do they have when they walk in a room? Because 2 days before Mike Tomlin was hired as a Steelers coach, if you say Mike Tomlin, people would go, who? But now if you say Mike Tomlin, you know right away what that means.
But in the NFL, you're drafting. You're not recruiting
exactly.
17-year-old kids.
But we're talking about that force of personality, and I don't know, what a Tom Clements is like when he walks in the room. Is he a commanding, and that's
he's also 58.
Yeah.
So I mean, is this guy going to be a caretaker just for a couple? And the fact that he has no head coaching experience, does he?
Which one? Clements?
Yeah.
Clements, no. He was Notre Dame's quarterback in '72, and he's been a quarterbacks coach or offensive coordinator literally for his whole career.
Yeah, so he hasn't recruited. Has he dealt with the media much? I just see some questions on a guy like him.
And that's the main thing. There are questions on everyone. I mean, really, no matter what name you throw out there.
Well, Fitzgerald, I don't think there would be questions. I don't think there would be questions on Gold.
What does he want at Northwestern? I mean, really, I've been a Fitzgerald guy.
At Northwestern.
I've been a Fitzgerald guy, but what has he won there, really?
Well, he's won respectability, and I think he's won enough games that he has a resume. I mean, Eric Parsekian was at Northwestern before he was at Notre Dame. I think that sometimes you have. Do you think that Joe's a better coach in the last 10 years than Fitzgerald
No,
has been?
and I'm playing devil's advocate. Fitzgerald's been one of my leading candidates all along. Teddy Greenstein from the Chicago Tribune told me there's no chance Fitzgerald takes.
You don't see a lot of movement within leagues.
This,
a lot.
this is why I think of all the names that are out there, and who knows how realistic most are, but I think Chris Peterson is probably the best case scenario because he's a big enough name that you'll satisfy a certain amount of.
Yeah.
And he has a reputation for graduating 100% of his players, I believe, last year.
And here are the peccadillos.
You can frame it that way. You
But
can frame it as.
here's what we don't know about certain guys. I had a guy on my radio show from the Idaho Statesman yesterday, has covered Chris Peterson, covered Boise for 10 years. He said he doesn't like dealing with the media. He doesn't like dealing with boosters. He would much prefer to sit in his office and diagram plays.
You guys will get along great.
Is that, this is a very serious point. Is that the kind of guy that can come tell you, maybe that's why he's at Boise. Maybe that's why he turns down situations. Maybe he doesn't want everything that comes along with a major job in college football. And those are the things that we can throw out Chris Peterson's name.
Right?
There's a big difference. This is in paper versus in person.
These are all personal things.
Right.
Mark Richt's family all lives in the Athens, Georgia area. Fitzgerald's family all lives in the Chicago area. We can say all these names all we want, but there are other considerations for these people.
That's true. But I mean, what roots did Cale Sanderson have in Central
Sure.
Pennsylvania? So you have this Ivor Lubert, who's a heavy hitter on the committee. Or guys like this. These people are salesmen, and how much do they want to put their own stamp on what's happening, or are they in it for the long haul? Is Dave Joyner in it for the long haul, knowing that if you hire a guy who's in the mid-50s, you're trying to get him, to get the program up and running again and people feeling good about it? I'm assuming the former Letterman, will give the next guy a chance because they all have stake in it. They want to see the place succeed no matter who they hire.
Just real quickly, tying back to something you said before, I think this all opens up the question of, is this, even though it's not an admitted in that way, is this a 5-year hire? Is this a bridge? Is it an interim hire, thinking that in 5 years you're in a much better situation to hire that person? And obviously having thought, what are you sacrificing to get there?
Dan Mullen is a name from Mississippi State that came up early. I've talked to a lot of people down there. I'm not sure that he's the right fit for this job. He's a brass kind of guy. He comes in, he likes to talk a little bit. He might immediately get into a war of words with Ohio State or Pitt or whomever. Does Penn State really want a guy that's going to come in and kind of start shooting his mouth off a little bit as opposed to handling the whole situation with kind of class?
I think they want a mature candidate. This guy's 39 would be appealing because you wouldn't necessarily be approaching this like, another 5 years. Now, I know it's not going to be a 46-year hire at this point. That's about the only thing I think we can be confident. But I wonder is this hire also going to serve the purpose of creating some distance between this scandal and between this current staff and its legacy to the next guy, where maybe an Al Golden at that point might be 46, 7. And I'm not even sure that a guy like Al Golden would be totally out of the mix right now, but maybe it might make more sense for a Penn State guy on the next time around.
Jay Paterno, the Pittsburgh Tribune reported, interviewed on Friday. Jay spoke to a class at Penn State on Monday, and a kid in the class tweeted that Jay said he did not interview for the job, so we don't know exactly for sure there. You mentioned Tom Bradley earlier. Does he look a little better as this process goes along, or do you think that they may have already made up their mind they're going outside?
Well, I mean, if a lot of people back away from it, but I still think you're convening as a committee, you're in multiple sites. Joyner's in Dallas tomorrow, Bradley's in Dallas tomorrow. I'm guessing some of these guys have been in New York, the National Football Foundation. I mean, at some point you have to show you can make a decision. So I just find it hard to say that they're gonna leave the interim tag on Tom through next year. I guess it's not out of the realm of possibility, and I think he's done everything that they've asked with the utmost of class. I guess I'll just be surprised if they stay in-house.
I think what's happening in the headlines, again, that have nothing to do with the football team right now are working against Bradley, where yesterday a new accuser comes out, today Sandusky's arrested again. Each day as these things sort of come out, that's certainly going to put put that concern in the minds of the search committee. The last thing you want is to make a hire and then have something new come out. And I agree that Bradley's doing all that, but I think that the headlines of the last few days are working against it.
Wrapping this up very quickly, we'll each give our maybe best, most feasible pick at this point. Who do you think of the candidates that you think might actually take the job? Who would it be?
I think I'd probably be leading to Tim Murphy right now. Because I think my gut is that Erickson is sincere when he says he wants to create the feeling that the emphasis has shifted off big football. If you're trying to do that, I mean, the textbook way to do it would be hire a guy from Harvard.
I've always thought Fitzgerald would be a good choice. I was kind of giving Neil with the sake of discussion there earlier. But to me, of the guys we've heard from, names as possibilities, David Shaw from Stanford. Offensive guy, 11-1 this year. He's been in the top 5. Great academic institution. Penn State's #1 in the bowl academic contest this year. You won academics. There's a guy with academics. He could probably win over some recruits having come from Stanford. So to me, he would be a good choice. How about you?
The longer this goes, I mean, it's like who do you want them to hire? Who do you think they'll end up with? I kind of agree with Ray. I wouldn't be shocked to see a lesser name, a Tim Murphy type thing, with the idea that they're going to try to heal this program and send a national message, because unfortunately a national message is ringing in everybody's ears right now.
All right, we'll be back in a week. Yes or no? Will they have a hire in a week?
Well, I think that's another element. I know that's not a yes or no, but I don't think they want to pull the rug out from Bradley. And I think if you want to have him coach the team in the bowl game along with his staff, I mean, Galen seemed ready for an answer in the locker room at Northwestern.
I think they have a hire.
There's a guy who's been hired and fired, and he understands it. I kind of doubt it. I think it'll happen after the bowl game.
After the bowl game, you're going to go all the way through the bowl game?
Well, I mean, if you don't do it next week.
I'd say like the 15th, 18th, if you don't do it by then, right.
I would agree with that. And I don't think there will be a hire next week at this time, but if there's not, I think you're definitely talking about after the bowl game, maybe the morning after the bowl game.
All right, thanks for tuning in.